He was once a poor, miserable loser, a filthy commoner with no talent. But after dying, he's reincarnated as a prince blessed with godlike abilities. Lloyd had lived his previous life as a pathetic peasant, mocked by nobles for his weakness and ugliness. When he was finally caught and brought before them for execution, they laughed at his miserable magic, calling him unworthy of life. For their amusement, they offered him one last chance to use his pitiful spell on them before they killed him. Blinded by rage, Lloyd fired off his weak fire magic, which fizzled out pathetically, sending the nobles into another round of laughter. At that moment, he questioned why he had even been born if he was destined to be this useless. One of the nobles, bored of the show, raised his hand and cast a fireball to end his misery. Lloyd's body was engulfed in flames as he screamed in agony. But as the fire consumed him, something in him shifted. Through the pain, he finally understood what true magic looked like: beautiful, powerful, and far beyond his reach. As his consciousness faded, he made one final wish: to be reborn and master magic, to become the strongest wizard imaginable. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying in an unfamiliar, luxurious room surrounded by maids. Dazed, he wondered if this was heaven. Acting on impulse, he reached out to touch one of them, and accidentally triggered a massive burst of magic that tore through the castle roof. Even as a toddler, his mana output was monstrous. His wish had been granted. Not only was he reincarnated with immense magical power, but he'd also been reborn as the 7th prince of a royal family. Years passed, and the kingdom flourished. People lived peacefully, working and eating well under the rule of a prosperous monarchy. Inside the royal castle, maids scurried about searching for Lloyd, who was, as usual, hiding behind a statue to escape his caretakers. He dashed through the corridors but ran into a group of politicians, quickly begging them not to tell the maids where he was. One of them tried to win his favor by inviting him to a royal hunt, but before he could finish his sentence, Lloyd had already bolted away. The blue-haired politician scoffed, calling his colleague a fool for trying to impress the 7th prince, since Lloyd would never inherit the throne. But the blonde man reminded him that this same worthless prince had been reading spellbooks before his first birthday and refused to drink breast milk like a true gentleman. Oh, and he also happened to blow a hole through the castle roof the day he was born. Lloyd himself didn't care about the crown or politics. He just loved exploring his new body, even if it had suspiciously thick thighs for a boy. But hey, it's a weird world. After losing his pursuers, he slipped into the royal library, eyes sparkling at the endless rows of magical tomes. He reached for one of the massive books, eager to read, when his teacher, Silva, appeared and dragged him out for sword practice. Their sparring was lightning fast, strikes and counters flashing quicker than the eye could follow. For a moment, it seemed the young prince could hold his own against Silva, and her, well, overwhelming presence. But soon, she began pushing him back with sheer strength. Catching their breath, Lloyd complained about sword training every day, insisting there was no point since he'd never be king. Silva reminded him that everyone, royal or not, should know how to protect themselves. She admitted that training him had become her obsession over the past 3 years. Lloyd told her to touch some grass once in a while, but she ignored him and charged again. This time, Lloyd met her strike perfectly. They clashed with explosive intensity, their swords colliding like Goku and Vegeta trading blows. Silva acknowledged his progress. He was becoming sharper, faster, stronger. Still, Lloyd could tell she was holding back. To even the playing field, he decided to cheat, using control-type magic to copy her movements exactly. It was shameless, sure, but effective. Even then, her superior reach and strength gave her the edge, forcing Lloyd onto the defensive. Knowing that failure meant hours of extra training, he decided to cheat harder, lengthening his sword with magic, enlarging his arm like a gym bro on steroids, and levitating to match her height. The duel continued, blades flashing, sparks flying, as the reincarnated 7th prince pushed his limits in his quest to master both sword and sorcery. Once again they clash, but this time Silva realizes that Lloyd is fighting with much greater strength. Their blades move in perfect rhythm, attacking and countering with precision. Lloyd uses his levitation magic to strike from unexpected angles, darting around her like a blur. Then, taking a bold leap from the fountain, he tries to land the final blow. Silva, calm and composed, blocks his sword with ease, slams him to the ground and gives him a sharp smack on the head. She scolds him for cheating. She saw him using magic to lengthen his sword for extra reach and levitation magic to make himself taller. But instead of being angry, she actually smiles and praises him. She's impressed that he managed to use 2 different spells at once, something even the best royal mages can't do. Lloyd realizes she doesn't even know about the other tricks he pulled, increasing his arm strength and using control magic to copy her movements. But he keeps quiet, smug about his hidden skills. That evening, Silva takes him to the bathhouse. While washing his hair, she rests his head against her chest, and the other girls nearby chat about the legend of a cursed book sealed in the castle's dungeon, said to contain the trapped soul of an ancient demon. Lloyd's curiosity instantly sparks. As soon as he gets the chance, he slips away using invisibility magic, sneaking through the moonlit corridors. He passes guards posted at the dungeon entrance, the air thick with strong magical energy that could shake the whole kingdom. Following it, he finds a massive door etched with protective spells, the entrance to the Forbidden Library. Without hesitation, Lloyd nullifies the barrier with ease and steps inside. The vast room is lined with shelves full of ancient tomes. He can't hide his excitement, darting between piles of books, eager to read them all. But before he can open a single one, a thick, dusty grimoire bursts from the shelves and begins to float. A dark, demonic aura fills the air as a strange creature starts to emerge from within the book. The protective seals still binding it flicker with energy, keeping the being half-trapped. The demon chuckles, impressed that a boy managed to break into the sealed library. Lloyd demands to know who he is. The creature introduces itself as Grim, an ancient demon sealed away centuries ago. He claims the seal has weakened over time and asks Lloyd to release him completely. To sweeten the deal, Grim conjures up piles of gold as a bribe. Lloyd grabs one of the coins, crushes it easily, and reveals it's just dust shaped by magic. He scoffs, calling Grim's magic weak and unrefined. Turning the fake gold back to dust, he warns the demon that he'll reseal the barrier soon. But first, he wants to read. Panicking, Grim insists the mage who sealed him is long dead, and that he has no reason to harm anyone. Lloyd doesn't buy it. But when Grim offers to teach him ancient magic, spells so old they've never been written down, Lloyd's eyes light up. The memory of his miserable past life flashes in his mind. The humiliation, the weakness. Now, this is his chance. He removes his cloak, smirks, and says, "All right then, let's see what you've got." With a surge of power, he breaks the seal. Grim bursts out, his form a grotesque mix of beasts and shadows. Lloyd grins. "Teach me magic, please." Grim's response is pure malice. He fires a devastating blast of dark energy that obliterates the entire library. The castle trembles. The air fills with ash and black fire. But when the dust clears, Grim freezes. Lloyd is still standing, completely unharmed inside a glowing barrier. Stunned, the demon fires a flurry of dark spells, but nothing works. The barrier doesn't even flicker. Instead, Lloyd studies the energy calmly, fascinated by its structure. He reaches out, grabs a handful of dark magic, and lets it tear through his fingers. The pain only seems to excite him more. "Come on," he says with a twisted grin. "Try your best spell." Furious, Grim splits his head into two, chanting twin incantations that merge into one massive spell. The combined blast could level the castle. Yet when it hits Lloyd, it does nothing. The barrier remains perfect. Now terrified, Grim tries to flee, but slams into another invisible wall. Lloyd smirks and says, "Oh, that? I put another barrier outside. Just in case, there's no escape for the ancient demon now." The kingdom of Grimm once again began preparing a destructive spell, but Lloyd stopped him and told him to show his best defensive magic instead. Then, without hesitation, Lloyd chanted a spell and unleashed a magic sphere so powerful that it turned the entire barrier into a molten pit, roasting Grimm alive while Lloyd watched from above. Afterward, Lloyd used his magic to completely restore the library to its original condition before Grimm had destroyed it. The feat left Grimm utterly stunned, and in disbelief, he started calling Lloyd Daddy. Realizing that demons can't truly die, Lloyd began considering using Grimm as a test subject for his new spells. Terrified, Grimm immediately bowed down and begged for mercy, promising to serve Lloyd as his familiar forever. A deal Lloyd accepted. Grimm then noted that Lloyd looked too intimidating, so he transformed into a small, cute goat instead. When Lloyd told him to hop into his pocket, Grimm smirked inwardly, plotting to take over Lloyd's body once close enough. But the moment he touched him, Grimm realized that Lloyd's mana was so overwhelming he couldn't even move a finger, let alone control his body. Resigned, Grimm started acting completely submissive, while secretly thinking of ways to one day destroy Lloyd and the kingdom. Weeks passed without incident. One day, while reading in the library, Lloyd's older brother, Prince Albert, second in line to the throne, arrived and invited him to a training session. They went downstairs where Albert showed off by hitting every target dead center with his fireball spell, earning applause from the maids in attendance. When it was Lloyd's turn, he deliberately held back to hide his true power, grazing each target instead of hitting them directly. The crowd still clapped, though one of the bald politicians mocked Lloyd for only grazing his targets, unlike Albert. Annoyed, Albert dismissed everyone upstairs but told Lloyd he could stay and practice freely. Excited, Lloyd finally had the chance to go all out. Turning to Grimm, he announced that he wanted to try casting 2 spells simultaneously. Grimm was shocked. Only demons could do that, as they had multiple heads for separate chanting. But Lloyd insisted he had an idea. Without warning, he used magic to absorb Grimm into his hand and began chanting. Their first attempt failed. Lloyd's spells were too complex, but he didn't give up. The second time, the air began to crackle with immense mana. Grimm panicked as he felt an unbelievable surge of energy building up inside the young prince. Lloyd was not only casting 2 powerful spells but combining 2 opposing magic types. The reality around them started to distort as 2 glowing orbs formed and merged, launching into the sky with a deafening explosion visible across the entire kingdom. When the dust settled, the training yard was destroyed and a massive rift had opened in the sky. Terrified, Lloyd watched until the tear eventually closed and things returned to normal. The next morning, Grimm brought a newspaper showing the hole in the sky on the front page. But Lloyd's attention shifted to another article, about an adventuring party who had found vast treasures in a dungeon. That inspired him to explore one himself. Using a piece of acorn, he magically created a perfect replica of his own body that mirrored his every move. Taking Grimm back into his arm, Lloyd flew off in search of a dungeon. Unbeknownst to him, half of Grimm's soul remained linked to the clone back at the castle, allowing them to communicate. While Grimm admired Lloyd's craftsmanship through a mirror, the real prince soared through the skies until he spotted a girl being chased by orcs. Landing on a nearby hill, he watched as she unleashed a unique breathing technique that boosted her power, allowing her to annihilate the orcs one by one, even blasting the last one apart with an energy strike Lloyd had only read about in books. When she noticed him, she rushed up the hill, mistaking him for an enemy. Lloyd quickly used imitation magic to make himself appear older and taller. Instantly captivated by his appearance, the girl introduced herself as Tao, a B-rank warrior from another continent. When Lloyd asked if she knew the location of any dungeons, she eagerly agreed to team up with him to impress him. Together, they entered a dungeon where Tao tore through monsters with incredible skill. Inside the dungeon, Tao slashed through every monster that crossed her path while Lloyd quietly collected glowing rocks scattered along the walls. Later, as they sat down to eat lunch, Lloyd asked whether she was using Kai to draw her energy. She confirmed it, explaining that not many people even knew about the technique. But in the middle of her explanation, she froze in surprise. Lloyd was already attempting to imitate her breathing pattern, and to her astonishment, he succeeded. He immediately sensed a new kind of energy swirling within him, which filled him with joy. Afterward, Tao led him deeper into the dungeon, where a massive wolf monster leapt out of the darkness. She instantly countered with a Kai blast that obliterated it. Lloyd was impressed by her power as they advanced toward the center of the room to inspect the treasure chest. Tao warned him that low-level dungeons rarely contained anything valuable, but as she spoke, she noticed Lloyd was still practicing his Kai breathing technique. Seeing his enthusiasm made her unreasonably happy, and she even began to imagine a future with him. Smiling to herself, she stepped forward to open the chest. But the moment she lifted the lid, a black blade erupted from the ground. It would have sliced her in half if Lloyd hadn't shoved her out of the way. The blade cut straight through the rocks behind them, leaving deep scars in the stone. Shocked, they both retreated a few steps as a massive skeleton rose from beneath the chest. A towering lich ready to kill anything in sight. Lloyd asked Tao what kind of creature it was, and her heart sank. She recognized it instantly. "A lich," she whispered. Without hesitation, she turned toward Lloyd, apologized, and unleashed a powerful Kai blast that sent him flying toward the exit of the chamber. The lich immediately summoned its magical blades and began attacking Tao. She dodged and countered, kicking one of the blades aside, only to realize how incredibly strong the monster was. It made no sense that such a high-tier creature was lurking in a low-level dungeon. Still, she decided to distract it so that Lloyd could escape safely. Meanwhile, Lloyd was still hurtling through the air, wondering why Tao had blasted him away. He used his barrier ability to slow his momentum, accidentally crushing two smaller monsters in the process. Looking down at his hand, he tried speaking to Grim, but something seemed wrong. Grim's voice came through weak and strained, urging Lloyd to return home immediately. Back in the boss chamber, Tao continued her desperate battle. Though she managed to block and destroy some of the lich's attacks, she was badly injured and running out of strength. She thought of retreating, assuming Lloyd had already escaped. But before she could, the lich spoke. Its hollow voice echoed through the chamber as it mocked her. "Kai magic is one of the weakest forms of energy. I once devoured a Kai user. He tasted awful." The creature explained that whenever it consumed someone, it absorbed their knowledge and abilities. "But you," it sneered, "you're so weak that I don't even want to eat you. Tell me about that boy instead, the one with the impossible reflexes." Tao, trembling, told the truth. "His name is Lloyd. Everyone on this continent looks down on Kai, but he found it fascinating. He wanted to learn it." Taking a deep breath, she charged again, attacking relentlessly while the lich hid behind a shimmering barrier. It mocked her efforts, claiming her strikes were too weak to even scratch its shield. But Tao refused to give up. She pushed herself harder than ever before, thinking of the years she had trained, every single day since she was 5 years old, to become stronger. With a final scream, she unleashed her full power, shattering the lich's barrier at last. But when the dust settled, the creature had vanished. Tao collapsed from exhaustion, gasping for breath. The lich's voice echoed from behind her. "Your strength is weaker than the magic in a single one of my fingers." "You're boring." It raised its hand and fired a massive shard of dark energy straight at her. Just as the shard was about to pierce her chest, it exploded into 100 fragments, blocked at the last possible moment by a golden barrier. Lloyd had returned. He stepped forward calmly and told her she had done well, promising to handle the rest. Tao looked up in confusion, only to see a wild, almost excited expression on his face, the look of someone eager for battle. The lich began chanting another spell, but before it could finish, Lloyd used Kai to vanish and reappear behind it. The monster froze, shocked by his speed. Hanging upside down from a cluster of rocks, Lloyd formed protective barriers around himself as the lich unleashed a series of furious attacks, none of which managed to land. Ignoring its assaults, Lloyd recalled everything Tao had taught him about Kai. He took a deep breath and began sprinting around the chamber, his barriers deflecting every strike. The lich kept attacking, growing increasingly desperate to shatter his defense. Lloyd then realized something. His barrier wasn't just protection. It could be turned into a weapon, Lloyd realizes his own barrier is blocking the airflow, so he decides to break it himself. This completely surprises the Lich, who immediately launches a barrage of magic blasts, trying to end the fight fast. But Lloyd isn't about to go down that easily. He swings from a rock, leaps across the cave, and dodges every single attack with insane reflexes, parkouring like a pro. Bit by bit, he starts to get the rhythm of the fight and merges his Kai with his mana, creating an unbelievably powerful magic. Attack! He dodges a few more blasts before releasing a massive wave of energy that cancels out all of the Lich's attacks. Shocking. Both Tao and the monster. But Lloyd isn't done yet. He creates razor-sharp magic blades and starts firing them at the Lich relentlessly. The Lich tries to defend, but Lloyd's attacks are too fast, too precise, forcing it to burn through all its mana just to keep up. Completely overwhelmed, the Lich stares in disbelief. Lloyd's combination of magic and Kai has pushed him beyond the monster's own power level. A slash cuts across the Lich's face, and Lloyd grins, his confidence rising. He sharpens his blades even further, each strike faster and thinner than the last. The Lich panics and forms a magic barrier around itself, but to everyone's shock, Lloyd's blades slice straight through it, cutting both the barrier and the Lich in half. With that, the battle is over. The Lich is gone for good. They check the treasure chest only to find an old, rusty knife. Tao shrugs, uninterested, but Lloyd asks if he can keep it. She agrees. Moments later, the dungeon begins to shake violently. Tao explains that it's normal. Every time a dungeon's treasure is taken, the whole cave collapses and disappears forever. They escape just in time as the entrance seals behind them. Outside, Lloyd stares at the disappearing dungeon in awe. Then he suddenly remembers. Grim needs him. He thanks Tao for the help and takes off. As he flies away, Tao yells out that the final attack he used is called Kai Blade, a move even she's never managed to pull off. She vows to get stronger and master all the Kai techniques. Lloyd laughs and promises to learn even more from her soon before shooting off into the sky. He flies back home as fast as possible and sneaks into his room, only to find Grim lying on the floor, completely exhausted and covered in bruises. Apparently, Silva had been training him non-stop after realizing he'd gotten weaker, completely draining his energy, even though he's a demon himself. Later that day, Lloyd shows Grim the knife he found in the dungeon. It seems to be enchanted. He carefully uses water magic to strip away the enchantments, collecting the residue in purified water. Grim explains that enchantments are extremely rare and difficult to perform, but Lloyd's already determined to learn how to do it himself. Analyzing the magical residue, Lloyd realizes he'll need oil, silver, and weapons to practice. He gets the silver from his father easily enough, but Silva, his sister, tells him she'll only give him oil if he can land a hit on her. Challenge accepted. They begin sparring, with Lloyd using every trick he knows: speed boosts, acceleration magic, and even earth barriers, but Silva easily dodges and smashes through them all. Despite losing, she gives him the oil anyway, impressed that he's improved so much since their last fight. With the ingredients ready, Lloyd and Grim head into their secret workshop. They melt the silver, mix it with oil, and create a glowing solution for weapon enchantment. Now, all they need are weapons. Lloyd visits his older brother Albert and explains his plan. Amused, Albert orders his guards to bring every spare weapon they have. The guards, nearly in tears, hand over hundreds of swords, convinced they'll all be destroyed by the 10-year-old. Down in the dungeon, Lloyd begins enchanting them one by one. Many blades shatter. The steel just isn't strong enough, but Lloyd refuses to give up. He keeps going, Grim helping him along, and even Grim's clone serving tea during breaks. After countless tries, Lloyd returns to Albert, proudly reporting that out of 120 swords, he successfully enchanted 50. Albert is stunned, because even professional enchanters only have a success rate of 10%. Lloyd realizes he technically enchanted around 80 blades, but when he tried adding extra spells to enhance them further, most shattered, leaving only 50 usable swords. The rest completely destroyed. When he reports this, the knights don't believe him. They assume he's bluffing about enchanting that many swords. One of them tries to sheath his weapon, and the sheath splits clean in half. Instant silence. Albert bursts out laughing, clearly impressed, and invites Lloyd to join him on a monster hunting expedition. Lloyd, of course, agrees without hesitation. The next morning, Albert and his party set out from the castle in a carriage. Lloyd's fast asleep inside while Grim relaxes nearby. As they roll past golden farmlands, the soft scent of wheat wakes him up. Albert soon points toward a dense forest ahead, marking the start of their hunting grounds. Lloyd immediately perks up, asking Silva if they'll find monsters nearby. She calmly explains that most monsters gather near the lake, not the forest, but she smiles, asking if he's enjoying his little adventure. Lloyd nods happily. It's rare for him to explore outside the castle, and he's itching to see how his enchanted swords perform. Suddenly, Silva draws her sword, startling Albert, who thinks he said something wrong. But no, Silva senses movement. Monsters are nearby. Right on cue, a pack of kobolds bursts out from the trees surrounding their carriage. Silva leaps into action while the knights form a defensive wall around the princess. Lloyd acts surprised, but Grim calmly mentions that he sensed the monsters long ago. Turns out Lloyd's been using a new Kai technique called spectral detection, which lets him sense nearby enemies, and he's been maintaining it for 24 hours straight. Grim's impressed. That technique is supposed to be extremely difficult to master. As the battle begins, the knights clash with the kobolds, and to their shock, their blades slice clean through the monster's armor like butter. The swords are so sharp it actually scares the knights. Even after defeating most of the monsters, they're afraid to swing again, worried they'll cut off their own limbs. Albert laughs proudly, praising Lloyd for enchanting the sword so perfectly that even top-tier enchanters couldn't compare. Silva joins in too, standing on a small mountain of monster corpses, despite the fact that Lloyd never even enchanted her sword. Just then, a stray kobold charges at Lloyd, but before it can strike, Tao appears out of nowhere, kicking the creature across the field. She scans the area, sensing someone had been using Kai magic, but can't tell who, since Lloyd is still in his kid form. The kobold recovers and lunges again, but Silva instantly stabs it, glaring at Tao. "Stay away from Lloyd," she warns coldly. Tao frowns, calling her a creep, and in seconds, the two are on the verge of a catfight until Albert steps in, diffusing the tension. He invites Tao to accompany them until they reach the lake. By nightfall, they finally arrive. The moon rises over the water as Albert thanks Tao for saving Lloyd's life. But she's still puzzled, trying to track the faint traces of Kai magic she felt. Earlier, Lloyd breathes a sigh of relief that his secret is still safe and sneaks back to his tent, only to get grabbed and strangled in a protective hug by an overprotective Silva. Tao watches this unfold and immediately calls Silva a weirdo. The two start arguing again while the knights just stand there, watching in awe like it's their favorite show. Lloyd sighs and slips away, muttering that this chaos feels even more suffocating than being stuck in the castle. Albert walks up beside him, chuckling, and warns him to be careful around girls. "Relationships," he says, "can be more dangerous than monsters." Meanwhile, the girls notice the guys whispering and immediately beat the living daylights out of them. Not that the knights seem to mind. Later, Silva puts her armor back on while Tao explains that she's actually here to repair a nearby chapel up on the hill. Silva tells her to hurry up and leave, but Albert insists she shouldn't go there at night. It's too dangerous. He suggests they all camp together and head out at dawn. But before anyone can reply, Lloyd's eyes widen. He senses something. A massive explosion erupts in the distance as a giant monster appears from the shadows. Lloyd's face lights up with excitement. It's the first monster he's ever seen in a forest. Everyone scrambles into battle positions while Lloyd just sits casually on a box, with Silva standing guard in front of him. The creature, a beowulf, charges in with insane speed, tearing through the knights' formation. Lloyd's impressed, but he also notices Grim spacing out, deep in thought. The beowulf lunges for a knight, but Tao leaps in and fires a powerful Kai blast, knocking it back. Unfortunately, the beast isn't done, It roars and charges again. Albert steps forward and unsheathes his sword. He begins chanting a spell and the weapon starts to hover behind him, drawing in all the surrounding magic power. With a sharp motion, he unleashes a massive fireball at the monster. The blast completely barbecues the beast while everyone watches in awe at the sheer strength of the heir to the throne. The knights erupt in cheers, shouting Albert's name and praising his unmatched magic. But Albert shakes his head. He admits that his spells are never usually this powerful. The real reason for the boost, he explains, is Lloyd's enchantments. His magic was amplified because of the enhancements Lloyd had placed on his sword. While everyone celebrates, Grimm suddenly calls out to Lloyd. He remembers something disturbing. The old chapel on top of the nearby hill was once used to imprison a powerful demon. Before Lloyd can ask any questions, the supposedly dead monster suddenly rises again. Shock spreads through the entire group as more creatures begin emerging from the shadows. Within moments, a huge horde of monsters surrounds them. Then, a grotesque hand pushes its way out of the bear wolf's mouth. From inside it, a demon steps forward and introduces himself as Paz. He grins wickedly and declares that he'll kill every last person there. The monsters immediately launch their attack. Albert and his knights try to hold their ground, but to their horror, the beasts regenerate almost instantly after every hit. Tao kicks one of them away and yells that things are getting out of control. They can't handle this many monsters alone. The knights rally and try to fight together, but it's useless. Every monster they cut down heals again in seconds. Silva orders Lloyd to hide behind the barrels, and he obeys. Then he turns to Grimm and asks if he knows what this monster is. Grimm frowns. He doesn't know Paz personally, but he's sure this must be the same demon that was sealed inside the chapel centuries ago. He explains that Paz seems to be channeling his mana to control the other beasts like puppets, using his energy to regenerate them whenever they're injured. Lloyd listens curiously and suddenly plops Grimm onto the ground, asking if Grimm can teach him how to do that. How to control mana like that. Grimm is shocked that Lloyd wants to learn magic in the middle of this chaos. Meanwhile, Tao continues fighting furiously while Silva mocks her for struggling against what she calls weak monsters. Paz laughs, clearly enjoying the chaos. He's confident he's already won since none of his opponents know how to stop his regenerating army. But then, he makes a fatal mistake. He mocks Lloyd. He calls him a useless child who needs a babysitter to protect him. The insult instantly enrages Silva. She turns to Lloyd and calmly asks if she can take care of something for a moment. Lloyd barely looks up, too focused on learning mana control, and nods absent-mindedly. An ominous pressure fills the air. Everyone can feel it. Silva is serious now. She grips her sword and marches straight toward Paz. He laughs at her, taunting even more, but she fires back, calling him an ugly incel who's probably never smelled a girl before. That stings. Furious, Paz attacks, but Silva moves faster, dodging his strike and slicing off all 4 of his limbs in a single motion. Roaring in pain, Paz channels all his mana to heal himself. At that moment, Albert notices something. The other monsters have stopped regenerating. He quickly realizes that if Silva keeps damaging the main body, the rest of the monsters won't be able to recover either. While the others continue the fight, Lloyd is still practicing with Grimm. Grimm tells him to start by shaping his mana into a simple form, then add color, and finally, if he's advanced enough, give it a scent. But he warns that it's extremely difficult magic. When Grimm turns back, he's speechless. Lloyd has already done it. A glowing mana flower floats above his hand, radiating multiple colors and even a sweet fragrance. Both of them sniff it like junkies under a bridge. Meanwhile, Silva keeps dominating Paz and his bearwolf, knocking them down again and again. She asks a nearby knight for his sword, and he immediately hands it over. Paz watches in disbelief, trying to figure out who this maid really is. Her movements are flawless. There isn't a single gap in her defense. He wonders why someone so strong would choose to serve as a mere caretaker for a child. But to Silva, Lloyd isn't just a child. He's everything. She admires the enchanted sword he crafted for her, gripping it tightly. Paz decides to play mind games. He laughs and says he's grown curious about the boy she's protecting so desperately. He promises to tear Lloyd apart piece by piece, to examine every fragment before burning them all to ash, because he's sure there's nothing special about him anyway. He darts around Silva in circles, trying to confuse and provoke her. It works. For a moment, rage flashes across her face. Paz grins and lunges forward, thinking he's finally broken her composure, After all, even the strongest humans are easy to manipulate when angry. But to his surprise, Silva appears in front of him while still inside the beast's mouth, demanding to know who he thinks he's fighting. Paz is so shocked that he can't even form a response before Silva drives her sword straight through the beast's jaws, slicing it clean in half. She leaps high into the air, framed against the moonlight, then dives down again, decapitating the beowulf in one swift strike. The true demon hiding inside is revealed, losing all composure as he tries to counterattack. But Silva is already ahead of him. She pushes off from the creature's skull and drives her blade through the demon's eye, then his mouth before completely shredding the werewolf's body into pieces, sending Paz crashing out into the open. Stripped of his disguise and power, she delivers another fierce slash, tearing through Paz's body and slamming him into the ground. Everyone around freezes in shock. No one has ever seen Silva this furious. Even Lloyd, usually calm, realizes just how terrifying her full strength is, and that even he wouldn't stand a chance if she fought seriously. Silva, however, has only one goal. She slowly approaches the weakened Paz, telling him to prepare himself for the bite of the enchanted sword, a blade blessed by the very boy he once threatened. Silva warns the demon to surrender, saying there's no way he'll survive otherwise. But to her surprise, Paz only smirks and exhales a strange pink gas. The fumes instantly begin reviving the fallen monsters who surge forward again. Before they can reach Silva, Albert and Tao step in, unleashing bursts of power that obliterate the attackers. Albert orders the soldiers to form a defensive line around Silva, ensuring no monster gets close while she faces Paz. But then the black smoke spreads through the battlefield. One by one, soldiers collapse as an overwhelming pressure drains their strength. Even Silva, powerful as she is, begins to falter, the gas proving too much even for her. She falls to her knees, struggling to breathe. Paz stretches his wings, grinning as he explains that it's been over a century since he broke free from the ancient shrine that sealed him. Since then, he's gathered countless monsters, creatures Silva now cuts down without effort. Enraged, he punches her hard across the face, sending her flying into the sea. Albert tries to reach her, but the gas has left him too weak to move. Paz floats above them, boasting that anyone who inhales his demonic smoke loses all strength and falls unconscious, making them easy prey. Yet Silva refuses to give up. She glares at him and mutters that his gas stinks, which infuriates him further. He lunges to finish her with a kick, but Tao appears just in time, blocking the attack and saving Silva's life. The demon pauses, confused as to how Tao is still conscious. Tao shouts for Silva to stand, but Silva snaps back, insisting she can handle it alone. Tao yells at her for lying. She can barely move, but Silva orders her to run to Lloyd and protect him instead. Moments later, she collapses into the water. Paz lands, impressed. He admits that Silva must be among the strongest warriors alive to have resisted so much of his dark energy. Suddenly, he appears behind Tao, smirking as he asks why she isn't affected by the smoke either. Tao lashes out with a kick, but he dodges easily, catching her leg with his tendrils and shocking her with dark energy. Suspended upside down, Tao realizes he's discovered her breathing technique, the method keeping her alive through the smoke. He mocks her, asking why she didn't run when she had the chance. But Tao just grins and strikes back, elbowing him in the face with a brutal blow. She declares she'd never kneel to someone like him and channels one of her most powerful spells. The resulting shockwave sends Paz crashing into the ocean. But Tao barely has a moment to recover her breathing before a regenerated beast lunges from behind. She barely holds its jaws open and realizes the monsters are already revived again. Paz emerges from the waves, sneering that her entire team was useless. She and Silva are the only ones worth keeping alive. He releases even more of his magic smoke, filling the air until it's almost impossible to see. He demands she surrender and become his servant. But Tao, trembling, refuses. She says she can feel her knight in shining armor nearby, a presence giving her courage to keep fighting. Angered, Paz orders one of the beasts to finish her off. The creature swallows her whole as Paz surveys the ruined battlefield. With a cruel smile, he pulls Silva's unconscious body from the sea. He says she's killed too many of his minions to be forgiven, and now she'll pay the price by becoming one of them. The dark magic gathers in his hand as he declares he'll fill her body with his power, binding her will until she serves him for eternity. Meanwhile, Lloyd is still calmly playing in the background when he asks Paz how he managed to control the monsters. Paz grins, boasting that he slaughtered the parents of these beasts when they were still pups, then used his magic smoke to take control of their bodies and bend them to his will. But mid-speech, Paz freezes. There shouldn't be anyone left conscious enough to speak. He turns around and is stunned to see Lloyd playing peacefully with one of the demon wolves. He demands to know how the boy can move so easily through the toxic smoke without being harmed. Then he notices Grimm standing nearby and realizes that Grimm himself is a demon. Paz mocks him, laughing that he's sunk so low he's become a babysitter for a human child. Grimm clenches his fists, swallowing his anger. He tells Paz that he'd thought about giving him advice as a fellow demon, but now he just wants to watch him die in agony. Paz laughs at the threat and orders his demon hounds to tear the boy apart. Lloyd, however, smiles. This is the perfect chance to test his newly learned mana transmutation magic. Grimm warns that the spell will require a huge amount of mana, but Lloyd doesn't care. He adjusts his mana output and releases it into the ground, creating a soft bed of glowing flowers. The radiant energy breaks Paz's control over the monsters, and they suddenly remember the warmth of their families, and how Paz murdered their parents. Paz can only watch, dumbfounded, as the demon wolves surround Lloyd peacefully while he pets them. Lloyd kneels beside one of the beasts and gently asks it to spit out what it swallowed. The wolf obeys, releasing an unconscious Tau onto the ground, panicking. Paz unleashes another burst of smoke, but Grimm laughs, saying it's useless now. The monsters are grown, furious and no longer under his influence. The entire pack charges at Paz with terrifying coordination, their movements perfectly synchronized. Lloyd observes their hunting patterns with curiosity as the wolves tear into Paz from all sides. But the demon quickly regains control, smashing their heads together and throwing them into the water. Enraged, he dives down and kicks one repeatedly, screaming that he'll kill its remaining family as punishment. Lloyd watches silently, analyzing the situation. He wonders why demons never truly die, why wizards have always been forced to seal them instead. Meanwhile, Paz's fury boils over. His body begins leaking raw mana, scorching the flowers around them. Lloyd realizes that perhaps wizards simply never possessed magic strong enough to destroy demons outright. Then the sky darkens. Lloyd activates his domain expansion, swallowing the battlefield in absolute darkness. Paz freezes, unable to move, overwhelmed by fear. Grimm explains that Paz's magic never affected Lloyd, because the boy's mana is so immense that Paz's pitiful energy could never overpower it. Excited, Lloyd decides to test new spells. Paz trembles as Lloyd effortlessly traps him inside a mana shield, though he narrowly escapes the first attempt. Paz then realizes the horrifying truth. This isn't even a battle to Lloyd. The boy is just experimenting, treating him like a lab rat. Paz tries to flee as Lloyd creates barrier after barrier, bouncing him around like a pinball. Lloyd calls out to Grimm for assistance, and together they double the number of barriers in half the time. Eventually, Paz is trapped completely. Desperate, he begs for his life, promising Lloyd a high position in his future court when he becomes the ruler of this world. But Lloyd ignores him. He and Grimm begin combining spells of every element, amplifying and multiplying their power until the energy builds into a storm of magic. They unleash it all at once, bombarding Paz inside the barrier for 30 straight minutes, testing how much punishment a demon can endure. When the barrage ends, Lloyd releases the barrier. Paz's body is burned, crumbling into ash as he floats motionless in the air. Lloyd watches silently, noting that everyone nearby is starting to wake up. To avoid suspicion, he quickly runs off before anyone can see him. Later, he meets Albert, who immediately asks what happened. Lloyd lies, saying that an incredible magician named Robert defeated the demon and disappeared. A few days later, Albert and his party return to the capital to great celebration. Before the king, they're praised for surviving against such a powerful demon. Albert explains that two others helped them, Tao and the mysterious magician Robert. Tao has since gone missing in the forest while searching for him. The king praises Albert, saying he's proving himself worthy as the second prince and could become the next king. But Albert surprises everyone by giving credit to Lloyd, explaining that without his enchanted weapons, none of them would have survived. He then boldly asks the king to include Lloyd in the race to become the new heir. The king considers it for a moment and agrees.